Egghead Island is now also officially over and we're finally going to Elbaf. Which also means that everyone's favorite coward is about to have his time to finally shine. Move over, Zoro. Get out of here, Sanji. We're about to start the Year of God Usopp. And of course, as we look ahead to Elbaf, our expert sniper here should play a massive role in this arc, as is being foreshadowed in this very chapter. But did you know that there's even some real evidence that we could see him eat a devil fruit, awaken conqueror's Haki, and lead an entire army of Elbaf giants into war? Who, by the way, we also just found out are actually way stronger than we ever could have imagined. But more on that in just a moment, because first off, I want to start with this panel right here. Because in chapter 1123 of One Piece, we clearly see that Usopp is the main Straw Hat celebrating with the giants going to Elbaf. Which of course just absolutely doubles down on what we've seen all throughout the story, that Usopp and the giants are basically kindred spirits. If you're a One Piece fan, you probably know that deep down, Usopp really has the heart of a giant warrior, despite his somewhat scaredy cat personality. Without an exception, he has always connected with the giants whenever they show up in the story, like the captains Dory and Broggy back on Little Garden, or when Usopp befriended these two giants right here and turned them from slaves of the world government into their allies. And let's of course not forget Dressrosa either. But to top it all off, one of Usopp's greatest dreams is to visit the island of Elbaf. So yeah, this has to become Usopp's big arc, and I personally wouldn't be surprised at all if he takes another huge step here towards fulfilling his true goal of becoming a brave warrior of the sea by the end of this very arc. Which of course is gonna take a massive amount of transformation in terms of power in more ways than just one. Because Oda has actually perfectly set up a bunch of incredible power-ups that could take Usopp from one of the weakest fighters on the crew to one of the most devastatingly powerful out of all of them. And the first of these power boosts is actually not for Usopp himself, but actually more so for his Kabuto slingshot. Because you have to remember that literally every single time that Usopp visits a place with new or very advanced technology, he will get an upgraded weapon. It happened after they visited Skypiea, where he went from his toy-like slingshot to his Kabuto, which incorporated the dial technology from Skypiea as well. Then during the time skip, he developed a smaller version, which is his current weapon that we see him now using today, plus he got a whole bunch of really cool new projectiles to shoot at his enemies as well. And so if Usopp can go from basically a toy to a legit ranged weapon with just some shells and plans, can you even imagine what kind of insanely awesome upgrades he could create with the incredible technology from Egghead Island? Remember, we even have a Vegapunk on board of the ship, and the possibilities are truly endless here. Please, Oda, I just really want to see some heat-seeking slingshot bombs or something, laser scopes, hologram projectiles. I mean, the sky truly is the limit here, especially considering that Lilith is still with the crew and should be more than capable to help Usopp really upgrade the heck out of his slingshots. Who knows, maybe a slingshot will even become a legendary grade weapon similar to the 12 Supreme Grade Sword. I mean, we can dream a little bit, right? Which Usopp might honestly even need if he's gonna face off with the person who will be his main potential rival during Elbaf. No, not Loki, we'll get to that too, but his dad, Usopp. And honestly, I'm not too sure how Usopp will feel when he meets his own father. Remember that Usopp actually kind of abandoned Usopp and his mother to join Shanks' crew, and then ultimately Usopp's mother died without his dad ever returning home to take care of either of them. So how will he actually feel when he sees his dear old dad once again? Will he be full of hatred and resentment once he realized what has happened? I mean, I probably would be. Or will he just want to prove himself to the man who left him, who he has idealized his entire childhood? This is probably the most likely scenario, and it could also lead to one awesome snipe off to see who truly is the greatest sniper in the entire world. Well, let's get real here. A buffed up slingshot isn't the only power up that we could actually see for Usopp in Elbaf. And hear me out here for a second, because how cool would it be? Really, like, think about it. How cool would it be if Usopp ate a devil fruit. And not just any devil fruit, I'm talking specifically about the human fruit model giants. That's right. What if Usopp could transform into a literal giant? I mean, this would be a real full circle moment for Usopp's arc and his love of the fearsome giants, and I would certainly love to see something like that happening. However, on the other hand, it is kind of rare to see a giant with a devil fruit. In fact, we've only ever seen 2 in the entire story, with these 2 right here. So maybe devil fruits aren't that much of a thing in Elbaf to begin with. And while I hope that it's not true, even if this would be the case, it's the exact opposite for Haki, because Elbaf is really shaping up to be a major Haki arc once again, just like Wano was. Because just listen to all the insane Haki moments that we've just been shown recently. First, we were just blown away by Joy Boy's ancient Haki blast, which certainly hyped up Haki for the entire fanbase once again. And on top of that, we have a character with the currently most impressive Haki feats in the story waiting in Elbaf with Luffy's mentor Shanks. And that's not even close to all that we've seen, because in this very same chapter, it was basically confirmed that the giants are all way stronger than we all even anticipated. I mean, yeah, they're known as the world's strongest warriors, but also back during the Bree timeskip arc, the giant captains Dory and Broggy got wiped out by a fairly weak Mr. 3, so we never really got a good read on their actual power levels. But now we do know that they are actually confirmed to be above Vice Admiral tier Haki, since they all easily survived Joy Boy's insane Haki blast. Plus, on top of that, we got a clear demonstration of observation Haki when Dory and Broggy stated that they couldn't feel the enemy's presence anymore at all, meaning that they would have to be aware of every single marine and government affiliate on the entire island. Plus, on top of that, they blocked Mercury's charge, which is a really impressive feat on its very own. And that's not even mentioning the way that they obliterated the Kid Pirate's ship as well. So yeah, these giants are way stronger than we all ever dared to give them credit for. And honestly, what's even more impressive to me somehow is that these 2 giant captains seem to be so familiar with Conqueror's Haki that they were easily able to classify Joy Boy's Conquerors as way stronger than Shanks's Haki, which of course by itself doesn't mean that they have Conqueror's Haki themselves, but they at least seem very familiar with Conqueror's Haki in itself, which is important enough in its very own right. And now let me bring all of this actually back around to Usopp, because there are a few really important hints and foreshadowing pieces about Usopp and Conqueror's Haki that we just have to address now that we're getting this close to seeing Elbaf. First, we should all know by now that Usopp's lies very often, if not all of the time, come true. And one of his most famous lies was that he is going to lead an army of 8,000 men. And while that obviously hasn't happened yet, what better time and place for Usopp to lead a big army than the one island that he has been waiting for the most for so long? But if Usopp is going to lead an army of giants from Elbaf, then let's be real, he's gonna have to really level up his own Haki capabilities and possibly even awaken Conqueror's Haki, which kind of sounds absurd if you've never heard of this idea before. I know, I mean, Usopp out of all people with Conqueror's Haki, usually you'd never think it would happen, but then we have this scene right here from Wano where he claims that Big Mom's Conqueror's Haki blast was actually his own. And once again, as we've seen many times, Usopp's lies have a real bad habit of coming true. So I wouldn't be surprised at all one bit to see Usopp awaken the Haki of the Supreme King, and honestly, that would be necessary to become a brave warrior of the sea as well. And how hilarious would it be if Usopp awakened Conqueror's Haki before Sanji? I mean, kinda mean, but do sign me up for that. Seriously though, since Luffy had a whole Haki training arc during Wano, Elbaf could be now the time that the rest of the crew finally catches up a little bit and levels up their Haki game by training either with the giants or maybe even the red hair pirates, who are all completely completely based on Haki and no one has eaten a single devil fruit. Now, of course, that's not to say that Luffy doesn't need any training at all though, because with the demonstration of Joy Boy's truly next level Haki attack and even manifesting it into a physical form, we can clearly see that Luffy still has way to go if he wants to become the strongest in One Piece. And before he can even think about Joy Boy's level, he first needs to pass his own mentor Shanks' Haki level as well. Which, I mean, looking at Shanks' stuff that he does, good luck, Luffy. And of course, this clash between Mentor and Prodigy is one that I am just absolutely dying to see, but that's of course far from the only conflict we can expect on Elbaf, because there are actually also a few other characters that we can expect to make big moves in the Land of the Giants as well, that we've been excited to see for a while now and still haven't gotten. First of which, have you forgotten about this guy? Yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't blame you, because he is literally the only supernova so far to not play a major role in the story. However, Elbaf is actually the perfect time for him to appear, because let's not forget that Uruj is from the sky island called Burka. And so with that, plus the fact that we suspect that Elbaf has a way to get up to the sky islands, maybe even the official entrance, I'm almost 100% positive that we will see Uruj play a major role in whatever conflict is waiting for us on Elbaf. At least that's if he doesn't get wiped out by Enel first, who could actually also make his return to the Land of Giants as well. Again, Burka close to the entrance of the Sky Islands, which probably is on top of the giant tree on Elbaf. That's a whole thing that we can probably get into another video as well, but Burka probably is connected to Elbaf on the top there, and that's Enel's home country, Uruj's home country, and the town that Enel destroyed before going to Skypiea. And I think that this would actually be the perfect time for his return, because we've recently had all the crazy connections between Vegapunk's Mother Flame and the mysterious sun drawings from his cover story as well. So perhaps Enel actually knows way more about the Mother Flame at this point than anyone else in the story, and all the crazy stuff that happened in prehistory with all the moon civilizations and people coming from up there to the earth, potentially even with the ancient weapons. But before we get too deep into that, let's first shift gears here a little bit, because we've spent almost this entire time now talking about Elbaf and what we hope to see there, but now instead let's talk about a really insane teaser that Oda snuck into this chapter, which has actually made me come up with a theory that might explain how Luffy eventually saves the entire world. Now obviously up to now we've gotten a ton of truly mind-blowing lore drops during the Egghead Island arc, and you might have thought that we're basically all done with that now that Vegapunk's broadcast has finally ended. Has it? Has it really? I mean, I really hope it has. But you can't forget that Oda is a really sneaky guy. And I'm here to tell you that in this very chapter, 1123, he might have hinted at how Luffy will eventually save the world using technology. So let's break down what I'm just gonna call the Island Cloud theory. And it all starts with the fact that according to Dr. Vegapunk, the world is going to flood again very soon. And we won't get into too crazy detail here because we've covered this on this channel a lot. Just check out a couple of the videos we made on it. But essentially, this is because the use of the ancient weapons, or at least this one right here, causes the sea levels to rise all around the One Piece world. And Vegapunk is also predicting that these ancient weapons will be used frequently in the future once again, resulting in a worldwide flood again that could then wipe out literally everyone that's still around that's probably not located on the red line. Except, of course, for the people living in the sky, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So we have now our end of the story world destruction device, and the next question we have to ask is, how will Luffy stop that from happening? Well, the simplest answer is that Luffy and the crew would simply defeat Imu and the Gorosei before the flood even ever happens. But come on, we do know that Oda is gonna milk every last ounce of drama out of that he can, and when he uses these ticking time bomb plot devices, they usually go until it seems like there is literally no hope left at all. You know what I'm talking about. And so in this case, I would bet everything, even my teenage cat Gojo, who now suddenly just wants to sleep all the time, I guess, and doesn't want to be in the videos anymore. But what we will see is some massive flood threatening the entire world before anyone can ever do something about it. Like, it's gonna look really bad for the entire One Piece world. Which of course means that Luffy will have to stop it, but how? Well, the answer might have just been shown to us in this very chapter, because check out this thing right here. Because you see, that thing here is the key to everything, and in the flashback of the current chapter, Vegapunk even highlights that this machine is just as important as the Mother Flame, if not even more so. And Oda just snuck it in here. In fact, he even drops a hint that this machine is the key to literally saving the world if a flood were to occur that no one could stop. Now, you might be wondering, well, how does this thing even work? Well, without getting into too many crazy details, we do know that it produces island clouds, which are the same as the fluffy yet very solid clouds that make up all the Sky Islands. And as we can see, these clouds are even strong enough to hold up the massive labosphere, so it's pretty safe to say that they are pretty damn strong and hard to destroy, which is pretty impressive on its own, I guess, but clearly one island-sized cloud is not nearly enough to save the entire world from a massive flood. And here's where things get a little bit more interesting and where we have to dive headfirst into theory world. Because while we're never straight up told this, we can pretty much assume that the island cloud machine is probably also powered by the Mother Flame technology that Vegapunk created as a super energy source as well. However, as we already know, and Vegapunk even repeated himself in this chapter, the Mother Flame is not a perfect energy source. In fact, even though much of Vegapunk's technology is based on things that he discovered from the ancient past, his Mother Flame technology comes very short to being the perfect energy source that we call the Eternal Flame. And this so-called Eternal Flame was so powerful that it was said to power all of the ancient kingdom's advanced technology, which is just absolutely insane to think about. One single power source literally feeding an entire society. So can you just imagine if you take that perfect power source and plug it into this island cloud machine? Like, forget an island-sized cloud, how about a continent-sized cloud or an entire world-sized cloud, which actually might not be the best idea because it would block out the sun and all that, but still, you get the point. There's potential here to create enough clouds of big enough size to save all the people on the ocean right now from a massive flood. Now, with that being said, of course, there are some major issues here though. The first is that no one knows what happened to the Eternal Flame, and even Vegapunk wasn't able to recreate it perfectly. But luckily though, we do have some hints as to how to rekindle this very legendary ancient power source, and it all again comes back to Luffy. Because if we turn back to chapter 1106, we see the giant robot Emeth awaken for the very first time, and of course it only awakens when Luffy transformed into his Gear 5th. And just bear with me for a second as I connect the dots, but this is a super important detail because as we know from another giant creature, Luffy's Gear 5th transformation sends out this wild heartbeat rhythm called the Drums of Liberation. And so the theory goes that since Luffy's Drums of Liberation was enough to power up Emeth, then this power must have something to do with the ancient Eternal Flame technology as well. I mean, think about it. It makes a lot of sense. Emeth is ancient technology and he's only awakened by Luffy's Drums of Liberation. And we assume that this rhythm hasn't been heard since the Void Century, so it's entirely possible that Luffy is literally the Eternal Flame himself, and once he masters his Gear 5th powers, the Sun God powers, he will be a perfect energy source for the entire world. Maybe that was Shanks' entire plan, turning Luffy into free energy or something, but literally he would be a shining sun bursting with power. However, it is probably not quite that simple also. But to me, there's really no doubt that Luffy seems to be the key to reviving the Eternal Flame technology. And so bringing all of this back to the island cloud machine we talked about earlier, if Luffy could somehow supercharge its cloud producing abilities, then he could save the entire world from a catastrophic flood in case they were not able to stop the destruction of the ancient weapons. But there are a few other drawbacks to this idea as well though. For one, we do know that island clouds don't usually keep their solid form when they're somewhere down close to the ocean. In fact, even Vegapunk himself had to create a climate-controlled area within Egghead Island, which allows the island clouds to function properly. However, based on this panel right here, they clearly had plans to be able to expand this ideal climate to the entire world. So sure, creating a world-saving cloud to save everyone from a massive flood is a little bit of an insane plan, but so far it's the best idea that I have for how Luffy could possibly stop everyone dying. But of course, at the same time, even if it wouldn't be used on such a massive scale, the Island Cloud Machine could still be used on a very smaller scale very effectively as well. And one perfect use that I could think of should be relevant again very soon, once again on Elbaf, because remember that Uruge's home island Burka was completely wiped out by Enel. And so since we do expect Uruge to reappear during the Elbaf arc, then a perfect use for the Island Cloud Machine could be to repair Burka to its original state by fixing the holes that Enel probably lightning bolted into it. Or otherwise, it could also be used to help reach the giant's Prince Loki, who presumably at least lives up in the clouds as well on top of that massive tree. But hold on a second, we actually forgot one very important detail here. How in the world are the Straw Hats gonna use this machine if it's still located on Egghead Island? And honestly, yeah, that's a great point you have there, except for this detail that you might have missed right here. Because here we see that Jinbei had packed up some sort of luggage to take to the Thousand Sunny during the arc, and then Jinbei just kind of vanishes. Yeah, we basically see nothing of him for around 10 whole chapters, so what exactly has he been up to here? Maybe carrying some super top secret technology onto the Thousand Sunny? I mean, we don't know quite yet for sure, but that's just one of the many dozens of insane little details that you probably missed during the Egghead Island arc, and if you want to see all of these, you can watch the video below right here. As always, thanks so much to all my Patreon supporters. If you want to get access to a bunch of awesome perks like artwork, unique bonus content, and so on and so forth, please check it out. Help us make better art and better videos for you. And otherwise, I hopefully will see you in the next one.